for that extremely articulate presentation. I'm sure everybody enjoyed. I did. So we're going to go to the panel very quickly. I think we are going to be given no more than half hour. So we're going to keep this very conversational, quick questions, quick answers. That's how we'll do it. But of course, I'll let all the panelists have their picks and talk about things which are close to their heart as they start their initial conversation. Just as a quick introduction, my name is Anish Dey. I lead energy for KPMG globally. I'm from the world of energy. I'm not from the world of agriculture and sugar and ethanol, but it feels great to be here. Thank you for inviting me, Chinimandi. It's something where we are seeing a lot of convergence. It's between energy, transport, food, agriculture, water. We are seeing a lot of convergence. That's interesting, but it also produces its own challenges because it kind of upsets established ecosystems. So that's something which we need to understand and how we harmonize it, because this is very important. I mean, if I had to take a little bit of a macro view about why this is so important, I work very closely with the government, including with Mr. Puri, and the reason why he is such a champion of ethanol, despite all the challenges which we have, is because it's a significant thing for our energy security, with 90% of our crude oil being imported and more than 50% of our natural gas being imported. We need to find domestic alternatives, and you can always argue that if you really did not have that level of imports, we had domestic supplies of oil and natural gas, your balance of payments and hence your currency would be much stronger. So that one thing actually causes tremendous damage to the economy, which is the import. And this is something which helps us avoid that if we can get to whatever, eventually by 1947, the goal is to get to 65% blending. So we are talking of E65 by the end of what we are calling the Amrit Kal. But then there is a whole journey to traverse. So what we are going to do in this session is actually, basis Mr. Verma's presentation, which was excellent and covered a lot of topics, we're going to go into a few themes, and I'm going to call out, the panel names, maybe it's not up there, so let me just call out for everybody's benefit. We, of course, have Mr. Verma. We also have Arushi Jain, Joint Secretary of GEMA. We have Mr. Narendra Mohan, Director of the National Sugar Institute. We have Mr. Prasad Ghawate, CEO of Rajganga Bio. We have Mr. R.K. Gangwar, ED of Mavana Sugars, and Mr. Sanjay Desai, Regreen Excel. So Prashant Dikshit. Okay, so we have Mr. Dikshit, who has instead come from Mr. Desai. So thank you all for being here. I'm going to lay out a few themes, and I'm going to let you, take your pick and then move forward there. The first thing is about the opportunity space, and I know that Mr. Verma mentioned the challenges in getting to about 20%. But if you have any take on the opportunity space on how we get to that 20% and beyond to 65%, I think it's important to look at that, and particularly in the demand side. Our session is on value maximization, and we should stick to that core theme of value maximization. We should look at how we can do technology leapfrogs, if any. And we are talking of 2G, 3G, 4G in our discussions on ethanol. We need to think about just beyond the immediate problems which we have on policy flip-flops and everything else, to see that how do we manage to make the technology flip-flops which will make this sustainable. We should talk about value addition possibilities, because I think there is a fair amount, it's about value maximization. There are multiple value streams which come out, including we talked about CBG, we talked about animal feed and other things. So how are there more value maximization opportunities? I do want some of the panelists to have their takes on the risks which we have been talking about, but what practically can be done to minimize some of these risks so that the industry, which is seeing this whole cycle of up and down, can actually see, and that can go back to the government in particular, which brings me to the next point, which is on the policy asks. What can be those policy asks which are practical for the government to do? I think Mr. Verma has laid out some of those points. If possible, I want some of you to talk about the marketplace for feedstock and marketplace for the product. I'll tell you why I'm talking of two. in any conversation till the last year, till this policy flip-flop happened, the big concern was about supply chains. And one of the things which I asked people who are experts in the industry is to say that how can we solve the supply chain? And they said that instead of getting locked in, you create marketplaces where there will be anonymous trading and visibility. Whether that's a possibility or not, if any of you have a take on that, I want to talk about that. But also, as Mr. Verma said, that the OMCs kind of buy in a very rigid manner. Is there an alternative to create a marketplace where that rigidity can be avoided? Because I don't think we're going to change rule-based 3 OMCs who buy as one overnight. But if there's a marketplace, then maybe there's a possibility. So around those things, now let me start with Mr. Narendra Mohan about some of those aspects which are there, especially on the feed supply chain.
Thank you. You have asked so many questions, so difficult to cover in one go.
No, you don't have to cover all. You can take your pick.
I'm going to be specific to, the biggest challenge and for the ethanol or sugar, we are talking about ethanol more than the sugar from the last couple of years. Today, the total sugar industry, when I talk about the sugar industry, I include ethanol into that one. It is in problem because of the raw material. If you talk about the sugar, we are not having the desired quantity of the sugar cane due to various reasons, and because we are not having the sugar cane, this is the reason we are not diverting the various intermediate process liquors for making the ethanol as well, so that has been dented. Second issue is with respect to ethanol, because we do have a fantastic program regarding ethanol blending, and since morning the people have spoken so many things about the ethanol. Basic issue for the industry is about the raw material. If you talk about the sugar, you need sugar cane. If you need ethanol, then you need sugar cane and you need the grains. Because for ethanol, you are banking upon either sugar cane or you are banking upon, you used to bank upon the rice, now you are banking upon the maize to a great extent, and government of India is also pushing the maize forward, and they are proactive and, in formulating policies and the ecosystem for the procurement of the maize as well. The problem is because you do have ethanol on one hand and sugar on the other hand, which is under Essential Commodity Act, and there is a fierce battle always between food versus fuel. So the government has to look the interest of the common people also to, have the adequate quantities of the sugar, and then you have to have ethanol for the ethanol blending program. For anything, we need raw material of good quality in abundance. Important is sugarcane productivity, or as Mr. Verma was talking about, since now we are talking about the maize, we need the productivity of the maize as well. We need many more sugarcane varieties, not banking upon one variety for the tropical region, another variety for the subtropical region, 86032 for Maharashtra or the tropical region, or CO0238 for the northern region or the subtropical region. So tropical or subtropical region, they need varietal museum. So many varieties having high sugar content and high productivity, only then you can have enough sugar, and then you can have the privilege of diverting sugarcane juice or other process streams for making ethanol. So productivity is important, and then maize also the productivity is important, because we are not having any GM corn or GM maize, so we cannot compare ourselves with America or something like that, where the productivities are 6.5 to 7 tons per hectare, or the yield from the corn or the maize is to the extent of 400 plus liters per ton of the maize. So we have to look into how we can increase the productivities and how we can develop many more other feedstocks too. Today we are banking upon sugarcane or maize or to DFG to a certain extent, but tomorrow the position will come when again demand supply scenario will come into the picture. You are requiring more of the maize, the prices of the maize will again escalate. So I would prefer to have, if we want to see this ethanol blending program a success in times to come also, because you need enormous amount of the ethanol. You have got a product which has got demand and demand and demand. So raw material development and alternate feedstock development is very essential. Important is for a country like India, where you are giving food subsidy or free ration to the more than 80 crores of the people. We are talking about the poverty, hunger index, and so many other things. Can we have more non-food feedstocks? as you talk about the 2G or the 3G or the 4G or the 1.5G also. Because when the people talk about maize, they talk about 1G, but if you utilize the fiber content of the maize, it becomes 1.5G. So beyond 1, 2, 3G, we can have 1.5, 2G, 3G, something like that. So the future will be safe once we talk about the food, raw materials or the products or the so many other raw materials which do not compete for food. And then we have to look into how we can increase the productivity of our ethanol units. Sometimes we forget to discuss about what we are doing. Sometimes we go to the government for escalating the prices of the ethanol from various sources. But we have to have benchmarking of the efficiency parameters, the conversion efficiencies, the fermentation efficiencies, the distillation efficiencies, the dehydration efficiency, and the consumption of the utilities. I remember attending a seminar which was convened in Commerce Ministry by Honorable Piyush Goyal ji. He wanted to discuss how we can see the program on ethanol from maize. Arushi was present there. So we had a lot of discussions on that because maize also has got challenges. So second thing is about how you can improve the productivity in the ethanol units, how you can minimize your cost of production, and then as you were talking about the value maximization. DDGS only for the poultry feed, or you can do something more than that? Because it has got protein content to the extent of 30%, 35%, or in the rice where you do have a protein content of more than 40%, 45%. So can you have, other food products which can be blended with the DDGS and they can be made nutritive, protein-rich, food products? It is being done in other countries.
Right.
So we can take lessons from those countries and we can go ahead with such type of the utilization of the DDGS, including pelletization or densification of the DDGS for safe and easier transport.
Right.
Lastly, I will take two more things into consideration because we were talking about the CBGs or we are talking about so many other things. Since we are focusing more on maize, so can we have some technologies where we can recover the corn oil? I know there are technological challenges or Central Pollution Control Board is not going to give you permission for the wet milling and all that. But tomorrow, we have to look forward for taking out something out of nothing. It is better utilization of the byproducts or taking out something out of nothing or converting waste to wonderful or waste to resource. And carbon, the CO2 capturing as well. 1.5G, I have already spoken regarding maize. So holistically, we have to look into how we can improve the productivity of the raw materials, how we can develop more potential feedstocks which do not compete for the food, then how we can improve the efficiency of our units where we can have, lower cost of the inputs and lower cost of production, and then how we can diversify and converting our waste to resource.
Right. Thank you. That's a rich set of points, and thank you very much for those. We'll pick up some of those and go further in, and maybe we'll go to you, Mr. Gangwar, about some of the supply chain aspects on that, and especially given the agricultural supply chain, which you clearly have expertise around. How that can kind of modernize quickly, and what would be the asks from, say, the government to help that process? Because this is such a political issue, it touches the common man and the common farmer. So we need to have balance both, but at the same time, we need to set out long-term, policies and policy vision. So your thoughts?
Thank you, Anis. First of all, I would like to thank Chini Mandi for inviting me as a speaker. Today conference has few achievements, I think, first day. The one thing that the discussion is moving from technical technology towards sugarcane, raw material. So this is a big achievement. I have been in this industry for last 30 years, more than 30 years, and many of us are even more than that. So whenever there is a crisis, whenever you heard a news of Brazil or Thailand or India, in Indian context, Maharashtra and Karnataka, there is only single reason of deviation in sugarcane crop, that is drought. So I think the main focus for the entire industry in India should be how to tackle this problem of drought. Prakash ji is here. I would request Prakash Nagarjee ji that he should also involve himself in framing such policies which focuses only on mitigating the drought issue in Maharashtra and Karnataka. Because you can manage the disease part. I mean, you have never heard that if there is a epidemic of any disease or any pest outbreak, so the loss of sugar or allied product has gone to beyond a certain limit. But the drought has a larger impact. And when Maharashtra is going to produce 9 or 9.4 or 9.5 million tons, we are saying that production is less. What about when the Maharashtra had produced even less than that? They have produced 7 billion tons, and 1 year they have produced even 4 million tons. So there are so many threats as far as raw material is considered, especially because of drought. So the focus should be whether we should try to have this lift irrigation further to strengthen that, whether we have some water conservation practices, some micro irrigation. So the entire focus of entire nation should be on how to tackle this drought issue. Only then you can survive or you can sustain this, whether it is ethanol blending, whether it is CBG, whether it is any other potassium products. So demand is there. The good part is that we all know that demand is there. There is a good potential. We are, even at 20%, we require 10 billion. Right now we are at 4 or 5. So I would request the Maharashtra and Karnataka team members, and the good part is that even at UP, under the noble leadership of UP ISMA President, Mr. Tamak Saab, we are moving towards various reforms in cane area. Our ISMA President is also, he has joined Mr. Dr. Prabhakar Rao ji. He is also from agriculture background, so I am sure that lot of thrust is going to be on agriculture. So this is the area I think we should focus maximum.
Yeah, so what essentially you're saying that if we have to modernize fuel, we have to modernize agriculture significantly.
Definitely, modernization, we have to see whether we can have the varieties which are drought resistant. So the entire research process or research thinking should be on that direction.
Right.
So first of all, we should tackle this problem.
Right.
Then rest will follow us.
Right. And a lot of those solutions will actually lie in technology. And that's what I want to pick up next as the technological leapfrogs. And technology has to be through the chain. You know, it has to be in agriculture, but it has to be in production. It has to be everything. Let me go to Arushi Jain. And as we start on your views on technology, how we can get some technological leapfrogs coming in and helping this whole process of ethanol production.
Okay, so hi, good evening. Thanks for giving me the time to hear my perspective. So I'll share a little bit of insight on maize ethanol, which is the focus of government and the promising future of ethanol industry. So let me start with the good news. The good news is that finally a revolution awaits the grain farmer. The sugarcane farmer has been blessed by many privileges of assured buyers and many protections. So finally the grain farmer gets some attention. So if you see as a result of focus on grain ethanol and the magical maize ethanol price, so if you see the index of maize commodity pricing, the first beneficiary of the revolution is the farmer, which is a great thing to happen. So if you notice, initially in Mr. Abhinash Verma's presentation, so the maize ethanol has received a delta of rupees 20, coming from a maize ethanol producer. They are still short of a viable pricing, but that's a different subject. So, but the good thing is that at least the farmer has been benefited. So when he receives a remunerative pricing for his crop, he's naturally incentivized to produce more. So the good thing is that we are expecting a much better output of maize in the coming season, the coming years. So that's great. So that's good news on the feedstock availability, at least from side of maize. Now, for the supply chain, so there are some things that possibly some interventions are required. Maize is not something that grows on the farm throughout the year. It's a cyclical crop like all crops. It needs to be stored, like how sugar cane is converted into sugar and it is stocked. Similarly, there is some infrastructural development, some support has to be extended to the entire supply chain, which of course our government has to take steps in that direction as soon as they think about it. So that's awaited because very soon there will be an oversupply of maize for sure, because suddenly it's become gold. It's a gold crop. So that's wonderful. So naturally farmers are bound to produce more and more of it. So, but if there is an oversupply and we don't have the stocking facility, then what happens? Then the prices crash and the farmer is disheartened again. So the produce drops again. So this intervention by the government is requested, that an adequate infrastructure like FCI facilities, warehousing facilities are requested very humbly. Because the paddy and paddy production did not increase, the wheat production did not increase magically. There was an infrastructure intervention by the government which helped in resulting in surplus grain. Speaking of surplus grain, our country is only surplus by 6% of grain all put together, the whole grain basket put together. So, which is not too much, it makes us adequate. But our growth has also been 2%. And it's been 2% because our population growth has been so. So because the consumer growth was so the food growth happened so. But suddenly there is a big buyer of maize ethanol, which has now come for the grain farmer. So we are bound to see a leap and bound growth in farming, in agriculture. So that's the good news. So that's about supply chain. Now the next, about the value addition. What was that?
Yeah, the production technologies. Are
Okay,
you seeing
the value-
that? Because
okay, value
just to
addition.
put it in context, you are getting a
So value
20
addition.
rupee.
So value addition. So maximization of value. So DDGS coming from maize, of course, the oil has to be extracted, and it is extracted in multiple forms. It can be extracted from in the syrup form, which we add to the DDGS. There is a wet fractionation technology. There is a dry fractionation technology. The wet milling does not really apply to ethanol. We, as Gulshan Polyols, we are also a starch producer. We do wet milling, but it does not apply to ethanol because the yields go down. There is dry fractionation, there's wet fractionation, there is the conventional dry technology, and yet we are not extracting the oil out of it. So that possibility is there. So that leads to my next, my next comment, which is about technology. So where are we struggling with technology? So plants in India are typically designed to process rice into ethanol. So now we have had a shift of grain. So a shift of grain is not just natural, it's not just grain, it's not just starch. Ethanol, in rice, we have more of starch, 68%, and in rice, in maize, we have only 61%, because rest of it is also oil, and rest of it is also protein. And in wet milling, we separate all of this. And right now, the way our plants are designed, typically on rice, so we are struggling to maximize the value from maize ethanol. So, and also basic things. We have set up silos. Now, silos, the way they're provided, it's not just a vessel to store grain. So if we are to stock some inventory for broken rice or damaged food grain, so you see, rice is already a factory produce. So it's already coming to us from factories. So the quality and the moisture content is already controlled. But maize is a direct agro-produce. We are buying directly from farmer. My company has started buying directly from farmer. So the quality variation is much higher. The moisture content is much higher. And to put it directly in the silo, I would have put the cost of that inventory all at risk. So the silo management, we need to learn these operations, you know. So there's a lot of technical challenges that the grain ethanol producers are facing to convert from rice ethanol to maize ethanol. So many challenges, which I can go on talking about policy. You want me to
No,
talk about that?
no, we'll run out of time if we do that.
sorry.
No, so,
Yeah,
so
I hope it was
great.
insightful.
I mean, there are challenges, but as all of you are saying, there's no lack of demand. So there's so much of opportunity also. And honestly, as an inventive society, India is the place which has become the most inventive in the world, so to speak, most innovative. So I'm sure that we are going to find some of those things. Let's move on, and I'm going to go to Prasad Gawate actually to add on to that, because value addition, technological interventions to make that difference. Your thoughts?
First of all, thank you so much, Chini Mandi, especially Uppal Bhai and Hemant Bhai. So basically, the value addition of ethanol, there are the lot of green chemicals that we can make from the ethanol. From our company perspective, we have planned some ethanol-based chemical that can generate the extra revenue. As Madam has spoken about the DDGS value additions, same we are doing for the ethanol value addition. That can be the premium price for our factory itself. So my suggestion to the, not the suggestion, but we have been in the industry from last couple of years, and what we have seen, those who we should have the other alternatives for the ethanol as well, such as the green chemicals, such as aldehydes, glycols, as we have been discussing about with the Regreen Excel as well. So what it does, it generates the niche profit, niche margin to the industries as well, and it can create the sustainability. As what the sustainability, in a perspective of the sustainability, there is some chemicals. We can use the carbon credits as well. We can generate the extra revenue to the company as well. So we should more focus on the, I would say 70% focus on the ethanol and the 30% focus on the ethanol-based chemicals, which can help to sustain the industry. So green, there are the, I think in the market, in the worldwide market, there are the I think more than 10 to 20 technology providers, such as there is a company called, I think we have been discussing, there is a Petron, Scientech is as well, then Regreen is there, who can, those companies are vigorously discussing about the new product invention based on the ethanol. So our company more focus on the ethanol-based chemicals, and that definitely generate the value, and we have seen that from last couple of years. Yeah.
Right. No, I think that's a very interesting point, because if you see what is happening across the world, electricity producers, including the green electricity producers, are going towards green chemicals, right? Through the hydrogen route, they're going through green chemicals. Whereas in ethanol, through the biogenic route, you can go to green chemicals, and possibly that's going to be much more cost effective than green hydrogen. So there is a great value addition opportunity, which today because there's a mass demand for blending of petrol, we forget that segment. But really speaking, this industry can, through the biogenic route, can get to green chemicals, and that top up on the margins which can happen can be very significant. Okay, we are going to move forward. I'm conscious of time, we are out of time. But Mr. Dixit, to you, especially from an engineering standpoint, I suppose that's what you do. So from an engineering standpoint, any transformation which you see coming?
Yeah. So many thanks to Chini Mandi, Anish ji, Jitu ji, for this opportunity. So basically in our Regreen Excel, what we are doing these days, we are encouraging all sugar mills to have grain to ethanol setup also, just to meet with these sudden flexibilities of, increase in demand of grain, and sometimes there is some restrictions by the government to not to use be heavy or juice, then you should have some maize arrangements in their premises. Plus, we are also developing new technologies where we can have some value additions. Because as a technology provider, we don't have any control over the prices of raw material, right? So what we can do, we can give 20% of cost savings on the value additions, steam power savings. So we are encouraging the use of tricanters. So in tricanters, you can separate the germ oil also while using maize. Because as you know, maize has been encouraged by the government from so long. Now it is being pushed to 72 rupees per liter of ethanol cost. So you can separate the germ oil also by using tricanters. And we are also working on new technologies where we can have a solid state fermentation. So while using solid state fermentation, you will having more of protein in your DDGS. So that will also give you the price benefit on your end product of DDGS. Because DDGS is the main product which is a price deciding factor of your profitability. So like this, now we are also working on CO2 turbines. So, you know, when you have a CO2 on its supercritical temperature and pressure, you can run a turbine and you can get extra kilowatts of power, which will help to meet the increased capacity of your own ethanol plant. So like that, you should have, you know, more of value additions. And here we are in Excel, we are almost doing 20 projects which are running on 100% maize. So we are trying to experiment more, and, you know, lot of topics have already been discussed, and Ayushi ma'am has already elaborated the challenges which he is meeting while using maize. So we are, you know, continuously in progress of developing new things.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. So we're coming, Mr. Verma, back to you in the end. We talked about flexi-fuels. We started with flexi-fuels, which is a big theme. We talked about flexi production. We talked about flexi products also in some sense. I alluded to flexible markets. Is it going to make a difference if you have market flexibility both on the food feedstock side as well as the products or the supply chain logistics side, you know, taking their product to the marketplace? Is there a bottleneck which we need to solve for there? And how can we do that?
You're talking about the product side in the sense that alternative to ethanol, or?
No, you mentioned that, you know, we have to take, because the procurement is such, we have to take in a product 600 kilometers across state boundaries because we don't have flexibility in the product marketplace.
Yeah, unfortunately, what's happening is ethanol is used only by the oil marketing companies who blend with petrol. So you have about 90% of the petrol sales only by the public sector oil companies, those three oil companies, and 10% would be with Reliance and Naira. Again, Reliance and Naira are very regional specific, so you don't have them all around the country. So you have to finally depend on the oil companies, the public sector oil companies. And what these public sector oil companies have done is they are floating a single tender. I'm supposing unhappy with one of them, I should have the freedom not to bid for him or bid for that particular depot. I've had a bad experience for an ex-depot because the depot in charge is not good enough. So I want to go to another depot. That is being denied today. And therefore, in the long run, we should have separate kind of tenders from these people. So that is number one. Number two, as far as the raw material side is concerned, personally, I believe that continuing with rice as a raw material to produce ethanol is not a long-term solution or long-term strategy, because the debate of food versus fuel will always remain. Whereas maize, if you see maize, about 60% of the maize in India, or even more, goes for animal feed like poultry or cattle or fish feed. And only about, I would believe, about 15% or 20% goes for human consumption. And the balance goes for starch making or other industrial use. So maize is going to be the most important raw material to move forward. As I mentioned, as far as even productivity is concerned, I'm not comparing myself as far as productivity is concerned with the GM corn of US. US gets about 11 tons per hectare, 11.5 tons per hectare by using that GM corn. Pakistan uses a normal corn and gets an average yield of about 5 tons per hectare, and we are struggling at 3.7 tons per hectare. Some regions in India, like Bihar, where we have our plant, they use what is called the hybrid variety of maize. So can that be spread across the country? The seed manufacturers have a big role. I can give you the example when I was working with ISMA. The UP millers have really changed the scenario of sugarcane and sugar in the last about 7 or 8 years by investing in new varieties of sugarcane. Uttar Pradesh as a state used to produce about 6 million tons or 6.5 million tons of sugar annually. Today, they are producing almost 12 million tons of sugar after the diversion into ethanol. So if you correctly look at the whole scenario, the UP must be producing almost about 14 million tons of sugar without increasing the area, just by investing on the variety.
Better varieties. Yeah.
Do we look, as I was talking to Sanjay Sancheti of Ulam, and he was mentioning that once you handhold the farmers, support them, they will certainly respond with better yield and better productivity. Right. So my personal belief is to help the farmers, to help any crop in the country, if the industry goes and locates itself near the farm, you will see that happening. Better varieties will get spread out. People will invest in the farmers, and then you will see better returns in future.
Thank you. And I think we'll end with that note because we are out of time. But what I take away from all of this is that given that we really have the visibility of demand, there's no problem around that. The ecosystem really needs to come together. There are many moving parts. Some of them are purely policy interventions to support the industry at the right times. Some of them are technological interventions. Some of them are in areas like water or varieties of products which need to come. But in the end, we are going to be critically dependent on the farmers. So hand-holding them, making them a part of the journey, which you also mentioned, I think is going to be super important. I think equally the point which I was pressing towards, and I didn't necessarily get the perfect answer because one doesn't exist, but getting the oil companies especially aligned to them and creating some flexibility will help them also in that process, help the country in the process. Today we are just wasting a lot of energy, CO2, and commitment of people, which will go begging if this continues. So I take that back because next week I'm in the India Energy Week, which is there. I'm doing my closing session with Mr. Puri as a cabinet minister. He and I do a talk session to end it. I'm going to pick this up and talk about this to him, that this is the voice of the industry which is coming, which he could look to.
So even I want to add some points. In India, we see almost 2.7 ton per hectare yield of maize, which is coming down, right? Which is practically yield we are getting. In neighboring country, like in Bangladesh, we see in Singapore and all other countries, they're almost getting, in China, when they are getting almost 8 ton per hectares of yield of maize. So it is a lot more scope is still available while we are practicing, good practices of agriculture, which we can, taught to farmers, and maybe government can support by encouraging farmers with good prices. Like right now, they are the highest MSP government is giving around 15 rupees per kg. That could be increased up to 22 rupees or 21 rupees. And as you have said correctly, that almost 60% of maize, which is going straight away to the poultry feeds and cattle feeds, while making it from DOCs and every other route. So only 15% of maize is available for ethanol sector and other starch industries. So while increasing the yield, that requirement can also be met, which is being required for the ethanol plants. And plus, we can get a value addition also while making a good quality of DDGS if we are using tricanters and we are using oil-free DDGS, because it have more shelf life.
Right. Yeah. Thank you so much. I'm sorry, we are completely out of time. We have been warned that we are going. Yeah, so.
Hello. I want to add what Dr. Avinash Verma said just now about the farmers. That UP, we have traveled during last year, 10 years, we have come from 6 million ton to 11 or 12 million tons. And it is because of the varieties and the irrigation resources which we have. And one caution is there that we all are trying to copy Brazil, but there is a difference. That Brazil has only one threat. That is the external threat, because their consumption is only 13 million ton. Their production or capability of produce sugar is beyond that. So there is always a gap, and whenever there is a loss in production, mainly because of drought, so that loss is accounted towards the external policies, maybe in terms of export or maybe in terms of ethanol policy, but not the there is no threat to food security. But India, the gap is very less. Until we produce more than 36 or 37 or even 38 million ton, we cannot sustain this model. So I think the effort should be only to increase the production from 28 or 32, 33 million ton to 38 million ton.
And thank you. And I think on that note, because it is very important, but we have done that before. You have already increased in the past. There is headroom in crops like maize, clearly, where it's there. So I'm sure we are going to do it if we keep the focus. Thank you. This has been a fantastic panel. I think there's a whole event set up, lined up over there, so we need to conclude. Thank you very much. Please put your hands together for an excellent panel.
Thank you very much to the panel. May I invite Mr. Roshan Lal Tamak, CEO of DCM Shriram, to please come up and present a token of our appreciation to the entire panel. And as informed earlier, we have the awards, the first ever Sugar and Ethanol International Awards happening on the other side, which is in like 10 to 15 minutes. We're just going to change the setup on stage. We have Bollywood actor Bhagyashree who will be presenting the awards. We also have some entertainment for you all, some dances, and also we have a mentalist who will be performing and reading minds. Once again, a gentle reminder to everybody to please collect your goodie bags from the registration counter on your way out, whenever you decide to leave. Also, while I have everybody's attention, the checkout tomorrow is latest by 12 o'clock. So when you come for the morning session, please make sure you've checked out and kept your bag at the concierge, which we have for you all. And then you come to attend, as we may not get time to go in between to check out. So request you all to please check out before 12 o'clock, if possible in the morning before you come for the session. All right, let's have a group picture of the entire panel on stage. Thank you very much. Let's have a collective round of applause for the entire panel, everybody, and for all the speakers, all the sessions that we've had on stage today. We will start with the first ever Sugar and Ethanol International Awards 2024 in a few minutes, just immediately after changing the stage setup. तो कहीं मत जाइएगा, यहीं पर बैठे रहिए. It's going to be an exciting evening ahead. We have awards being presented and a lot of entertainment. The awards will be presented by Bollywood actor Bhagyashree. She is ready to come here. We're just going to quickly change the setup and get started with the awards. Thank you.